Now, I don't want to say that every single Chinese person hates buffalo wings. I mean, six of humanity, I'm sure you could find somebody somewhere. But in a decade and a half of living here in China, every single Chinese friend that I tried to introduce them to hasn't been a fan. Now, that's of course just my personal experience, but maybe a little bit more objectively, you can definitely get Western food here in China. I mean, burgers, hot dogs, fried chicken, French fries, pizza, even bagels, kind of. But buffalo wings, outside of an expat haunch or two, nada. Which, like, I don't know, kind of sucks, right? Like, I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, college, my absolute favorite food in the world was buffalo wings. They were, for me, a little like what Nuzha Cantonese street beef shops were for Steph. Coming from a very white bread American home cooking background and a white rice Cantonese home cooking background, those two respective dishes were our first introduction to, well, flavor. Like for me, back when I was 17, me and my buddies, we would kind of get together for these makeshift wing eating contests. Your mouth's on fire, your hands are sloppy, but the blue cheese, the butter, it's just, I don't know, good memories. So naturally, over the years, I've tried to introduce my Chinese friends to the same experience. And try as I might, basically to a man, none of them have ever actually been into it. And if I try to grill them down a little bit as to why, also basically to a man, the response is that it's just too sour. And so I've thought about this problem a lot over the years, maybe a little bit too much. And after all this time, I think I might have been able to figure it out. Now, it's pained me to admit it, but I think if you look inside yourself, you'll find it to be true too. And that is the very base of a buffalo sauce, the canonical hot sauce for an authentically correct buffalo, Frank's Red Hot, is completely fucking garbage. Now, if you're anything like me, you're going to want to resist this information. But I want you to take a bottle of Frank's. I want you to open it. I want you to take a sniff and compare it against a Crystal or a Valentina or even Tabasco. Like, this shit here is vinegar. It tastes like vinegar essence. The fragrance is basically non-existent. It doesn't have a good chili flavor, and it's not even spicy. This here is basically some white vinegar that somebody lightly whispered the words chili pepper over and called in the rest of the day. Now, maybe Frank's used to be better. Maybe this is another one of those cases of the MBA crowd taking an American food product, running it straight into the ground, and hoping that nobody noticed. But in this specific case, I don't think that there's any conspiracy needed. I've got a different hypothesis. So cut back to me back when I was 17. Back then, white person crunchy taco night was my idea of some wild flavors. So predictably, my spice tolerance, it was really quite low. And so I think if you're the type of person that if you just had a teaspoon of this straight, your predominant feeling is, oh, that is a spicy meatball. Buffalo is going to taste balanced to you because the vinegar, it cuts the heat. The garlic cuts the heat. The blue cheese dressing will definitely cut the heat, but especially the butter cuts the heat. The end result is a product that, in Buffalo's defense, is actually one of the perfect gateway spicy foods. But now I want you to picture the average Chinese spicy food enthusiast. Like, this here functionally is your local bar. When you're at the Xiaokao, you're definitely going to be ordering a fistful of the beef chili bombs. When you have some white rice, you're dumping lao gama on, not because it's actually spicy, just so that you can actually feel something. If your mouth has already adjusted to Sichuan hot pot tema tela levels of spicy, you're going to taste Frank's, and it's gonna taste like vinegar. It doesn't matter how much extra cayenne pepper your foreigner friend added, even compared to a simple malatang. Buffalo wings, they're not gonna be spicy, and so they're not gonna taste balanced. So in this video, what I decided to do was try to rebuild a new, better buffalo wing from first principles. So, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, I think a buffalo sauce, it should be spicy just to the point of challenging, maybe getting past challenging at around wing 4 or so. The sauce itself, it should be definitely quite buttery. It should have a slight tang and a mild hit of garlic to it. I also don't want any weird ingredients in the sauce, like ketchup or, God forbid, blue cheese. That belongs in the dip. But also, at the same time, for the purpose of this exercise, I don't want to cheat and use anything that tastes overly Chinese either. So that's the goal. I want an authentic tasting, but better buffalo wing that can finally appeal to the Chinese palate. So, right, basics. Now, Frank's is, of course, an American-style fermented hot sauce. Now, before I could easily get Frank's here, I still remember in my love of everything buffalo, frantically searching for recipes online on how to ferment chilies for hot sauce so that I could recreate it here in China, which was a project that I never ended up doing because lazy. But a little bit ago, I was at the market and I was realizing that 20s me was really being pretty stupid. Because here in China, we can get some fantastic quality lacto-fermented chili peppers, some of which can really get quite spicy, definitely spicier than Frank's. So if you are in the market of following along at home, this here is a variety of pickled chili that's actually pretty available at Chinese supermarkets in the West as well. They're called millet chilies, xiaomi la. And if you ate one of these straight, it would be really quite uncomfortable, which is what we want because remember, the remainder of our buffalo sauce is going to be a conspiracy to balance that heat. So what we'll do is we'll blend 85 grams of those together with a clove or two of garlic, together with a third of a cup of water. Then we'll pass that through a fine mesh sieve, and then with that, this is going to be our hot sauce base. No Frank's required. That brings me to pain point number 2, which is the fundamental technique of how buffalo sauce is made. Now, for the unaware, you make a buffalo sauce by taking hot sauce and then using a French technique called mounting with butter. It's kind of the same idea as something like a beurre blanc. You take your sauce and then you whisk cubes of cold butter in. The thick butter, it blends in, and then you're left with a thick, rich sauce. But I think for hot wings, there's a couple of problems with this approach. The first one is that this is not that stable of a concoction. Like, I want to toss wings in a sauce while they're still piping hot from deep frying. And when I do that with this kind of butter-mounted sauce, it's at a high risk of breaking on me. Now, from what I can tell, the OG buffalo sauce, it actually used margarine instead of butter. And these days at sports bars and the like, oftentimes people will work off of this product, both of which have stabilizers to thicken. Which then brings me to the pain point number 2. I want a thick sauce that actually really coats to my wings. I don't really like those thin hot sauces. Like, at that point, I'd rather just dip the thing and keep the crispiness. But to get to the thickness that I want by mounting it with butter, I usually end up needing to go half-half, which is one of the canonical ratios for a buffalo sauce. But by that point, the sauce, it ends up losing much of the spiciness that we've worked so hard for, and importantly, also for the Chinese palate, is also really rich. Like, I don't know if you've ever actually let homemade buffalo sauce sit out and get cold for a while. The stuff, it ends up almost gross. Like, you could take it and literally spread it on toast. So I was thinking about this problem for a while, and I couldn't think of anything overly elegant. So in the end, I'm going to do what I know how to do, which is stir frying up a sauce. Now, I'll be adding a bunch of butter, of course. These are buffalo wings. Fear not the butter. But I'm also going to be thickening with starch, specifically a potato starch in the Chinese style so that the final product can actually hold. So buffalo flavors, saucy Chinese stir-fry technique. So Here we've got 15 wings. And of course, the authentic move for an American-style hot wing is definitely to fry them naked. No marinade, no coating, no nothing. But for me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be taking a little bit of inspiration from an old school Yunnan dish called shengjiaji, or directly fried chicken, which is marinated and does have a light crispy coating. I know you might be skeptical, just stay with me. I promise that it does work. So then, to marinate my wings, I'll just toss in a teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon chicken bouillon powder, half tablespoon each of a red fragrant chili powder, a spicy chili powder, soy sauce, bourbon, and Tabasco, together with a quarter teaspoon each white pepper and garlic powder. Mix that well and then let that marinate in the fridge for at least a couple of hours. Then, right before deep frying, we'll whisk 1 egg white and then mix that in with a slurry of just 10 grams each of water and cornstarch, and then mix that super well with the wings. Then we'll get a wok of oil up to about 120 Celsius, drop in the wings, quick jostle, and let the coating form for about 1 minute. Then remove that, get your oil up to about 175, and then drop the wings in again. Fry those for about 4 minutes or so, or until everything's totally cooked and the wings are good and crispy, and then take those out to drain. Now, for our sauce then, together with our makeshift hot sauce from before, we'll toss in enough chicken stock or water, or combination, to get to 1 cup worth of liquid. And also toss in a half tablespoon each milk powder and Tabasco, a teaspoon each sugar and rice vinegar, a quarter teaspoon each white pepper and MSG, a half teaspoon chicken bouillon powder, and an 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. Mix that well, and then we're ready to fry. But one last final thing before we stir fry. Everything up to now, it was all pretty tasty. I liked it, Steph liked it, but I still did want it a little bit spicier. So what I decided to do, and this is completely optional, is amp things up with a little bit of the spiciest chili pepper that the nation state of China has to offer. And that is a little bit of Yunnan's very own shuan la. So this thing here, what it is it's a ghost pepper. It comes from Dehong near the Myanmar border. Apocryphally, one of the most traditional uses for the thing was to keep elephants away from your vegetable fields. But the culinary use there is also really quite interesting. So it's called shuan la because it's used for dips. The character shuan in Chinese, it means dip or swish, maybe. And so this thing, it's literally called swish spicy. Because what you do is you'll take your dip, you'll take your ghost pepper, and you'll just swish, and then that's already enough for spicy. So we'll just toss a half a ghost pepper in here just for as long as it takes for everything to get started with the stir fry. Then we're going to take it out because I'm not a masochist. But if you have a higher spice tolerance than I do, definitely you can leave it in. So to our wok, we'll first toss in 2 tablespoons of butter and then let that foam over a low flame. Then go in with 1 finely minced clove of garlic, and then once that's fragrant, we'll toss in 3 more pickled spicy chilies for the sake of good looking, and a half teaspoon of a spicy chili powder. Now, up the flame to high, give it all a quick mix, then pour a tablespoon of bourbon over the spatula and around the side of the wok. Quick mix, sauce in, and once that's at a light boil, swap the flame down to low and drizzle in a slurry of about 2 teaspoons of starch mixed with an equal amount of water. Once that's thickened to about this kind of consistency, we'll then shut off the heat and mount things with cold butter, bit by bit to get to our desired butteriness, which was for us 2.5 more tablespoons. Then, piping hot deep fried wings in, give that all a really good mix, then transfer the sauced wings over to a plate and the excess buffalo over to a bowl. And excess buffalo because looking at this dish during testing, for some reason, a little mote of my brain kept on thinking of Singaporean chili crab. Now, I'm really not sure why. The dishes really don't have much in common with each other, but I did decide to serve this alongside some deep fried mantos, just like in Singapore, which honestly is a fantastic combination and might actually be the best idea of this entire exercise. But besides that, of course, we'll also have the mandatory side of celery, albeit peeled to get it stringless in the Cantonese style, and also a side that I personally like, which are some fresh mild chilies. Then we'll serve that all with some blue cheese dressing, of course, and you should definitely buy yours, but here in Yushi, I can't go to the supermarket and buy some. So I just whipped together a bog standard 75 grams of blue cheese, 1 cube of white fermented tofu, 75 grams of plain yogurt, 20 grams of a non-Asian mayonnaise, a teaspoon of sugar, and a quarter teaspoon each salt, MSG, and rice vinegar. Sprinkle of minced celery leaf, and with that, these are my American-style buffalo wings, remixified for the Chinese market. Steph, do you want to give these a go? Hang on, let's... You're not short. I'm just so tall, everybody.
Let's see. Now, this buffalo wings taste pretty good to me now. Better than our local farang bars in both Bangkok and Shenzhen. But important thing is, where does it rank among all of our 401 concoction, from Taco Bell Jianbing to Henry Kissinger's 蘑菇改品? Well, first, I think our all-time best is our chili chip 辣子鸡, the Sichuan style chili chicken where you can eat the chili chips. It's so good that it should really be a thing. As for this buffalo wing, I think it ranks slightly above the deep fried pineapple pizza bao. Anyway, all of our 401 recipes are real recipes tested. If you're ever curious of any one of them, I do really recommend you give it a try. They are quite fun and tasty. Anyway, real normal Chinese recipe coming out next week-ish. In the meantime, thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon and subscribe for more Chinese remixified videos.
They would definitely be better.
You don't want that.
You know what Ghost Shepherd do? Would you be afraid of the vegetable fields?